Each time the culture forces Christianity to evolve, it has to shed its nasty habits and find an authentic witness for a new time. And for the last few generations, the church has been wondering why the status quo is failing. I think it's because the church has been looking for the same old fruit in a season that is ripe for something different. Martin Luther tapped 95 theses to the door at Wittenberg in 1517, and if you are quick with your math, then you know that just 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the 501st anniversary of the Protestant Reformation. And if Phyllis Tickle is right, and I think she might be, we're on to something. It would explain why we're going through a period of such intense shift and that there is hope on the way. If the printing press changed global Christianity, just consider what the internet is going to do. Consider how living in our global economy, I don't think they were thinking Amazon back then, right, is going to redefine who our neighbor is. Instantaneous communication is going to destroy our previous notions of friend and foe, maybe even good and evil. What a not-so-flat earth did to our understanding of the cosmos then, Darwin, Freud, Stephen Hawking are doing it to it now. We are making room again for mystery and doubt at the wonder of the universe from a single atom to the human mind. And it's an amazing time to be in the midst of these questions. In this time of change, we have a privilege, is what I'm saying. So how are we to respond? First of all, I don't have all the answers. I have 3 jobs. I'm trying to keep up with those. But what I've encountered is a lot of questions, hopefully a lot of good questions, and just a few things along the way in my work with young folks and diverse communities and unchurched people that I'll share with you and see if it doesn't inspire you to hope when you hear statistics that are trying to cause you fear. First of all, I think that the church needs to be far more intergenerational. And by intergenerational, I don't mean that we have a silo, like a really great children's program, and a really great youth program, and an awesome young adult program, and then a women's program, and a men's program, and a senior citizens program. No. See, the sign of a successful church in the 21st century is having enough resources to keep everybody separate. But I don't think that makes us grow. I don't think it makes us faithful, and I don't think it gives us wisdom, right? I think that the best thing we can be doing is nurturing people, certainly with their peers, but getting them in conversations and in worship together across generations. Grandparents, have you ever talked to your grandkids? And just all the wisdom that's coming out of them astounds you. Your grandkids feel the same way, right? So I'm never going to be the young pastor who works with young people and then comes to tell you that the problem is older people. What I love most about doing ministry with all ages isn't just spending time with each age group, but getting everybody in the room together and sharing stories and hearing everybody's wisdom come out. Because my greatest teachers, when it comes to church and tradition and how we have to reimagine things, have always been the most seasoned folks in my life. And not because they could tell me a thing or two about how to follow the rules and why I ought to. It's because they're the best at breaking them. Let me explain what I mean. The Dalai Lama says, know the rules well so you can break them effectively. Or if you need a different metaphor, one that speaks to me is jazz and improvisation, if you're a musician. I'm trying to make something meaningful about all the time I spent in the band room right now. To play jazz, you have to first learn classical musical theory. You cannot improvise until you know the basics, scales, rhythm, traditional classical theory, right? But once you get to jazz, once you start playing with the rules and breaking them effectively, everybody gets a role to play. Even if you're not a musician, you don't have to be that talented because jazz needs the person humming along, the person stomping their foot to the rhythm. Once you get to jazz, you get a far more expressive and inclusive art form. It's about having conversations that help us to embody the best of this next evolution in community. I hope that we can get into intergenerational conversations because they contribute to a dialogue that transcends barriers and includes the other. I think young people need mentors and connections across difference. That's why we try to partner our students with mentors and get various local churches involved at Wesley. You can see Mimi Naval. She's our student president. She's here today. She'll be by the front door, and she'll be telling you about ways you can get involved. If you want to serve a meal, if you want to adopt a student, if you want to show up and just be a part of what we're doing. Stetson is big, relatively speaking. And students need to see how many options there are out there for finding a community and connection that speaks to them. In the past year and a half, since I became the director, we've taken students to Portland, Nashville, North Carolina. We took them to annual conference for the first time as voting delegates because we want them to understand that they are a part of something bigger than themselves and that they have resources and guides out there that can help them on their spiritual journey. I think that intergenerational relationships can help us hold the tension between tradition and the new life that is bursting forth on the mission edge. Second, and this is the part that gets a little uncomfortable, that starts to feel like a little bit of a death, right? We're going to have some hard conversations. Because one of the other tensions that we have to hold is between creating safe spaces to critique the tradition and to define ourselves always by what we love and not by what we're against. First, if you want the church to be engaging to new generations, younger people, who are just as spiritual, by the way, statistics are showing, as any other time in history, maybe even more so, but they are far less religiously affiliated, we cannot afford to not be informed. We cannot be afraid of technology or science or current affairs. We cannot fear the internet. And one of the ways that we lived this out at Wesley is that when I arrived last fall, I asked our students, we don't want to be just attractional, we want to be incarnational. By that I mean, we don't want to build the best pizza party ever and invite them to come to our building out of their life and stop by and join us in what we're doing. We want to go out to what they are doing in their lives, meet them where they are, hear their needs, hear their story, and set up camp with them. And so my students went out and they started to identify needs among the other students at Stetson. And they began to love without agenda. And what we came up with was that they came back and they said, there's no small group study space. If you want to study with a group, you got a group project, there's no room in the library, it's always booked. Every cafeteria is super busy, super loud. If you don't have a car, you can't just go down the street. They're not finding a space where they can do this. I said, okay, well, that's our offering. That's our gift of hospitality. And so we opened the house up with coffee and snacks and whiteboards and sticky notes and no agenda. This was no bait and switch, like, come study, here's Jesus, tricked ya again. No, but we did make it our own. We're who we authentically are, and what that means is, if you're there and you want to, you can take a study break with us, and we offer spiritual practice study breaks, like centering prayer and yoga and going to walk the labyrinth. And we do that so that students will begin to understand, no matter what their background, that their spirituality and their scholarship can coexist. God loves your heart and your mind and needs them both at work in the world. And that's going to mean some tough subjects. We have to maintain the space for people to have those conversations because it takes tremendous courage to walk into the church for the first time or for the first time in a long time, especially if you've had bad experiences in some form of church or religion. And if we can't hold the space for people to ask critical questions and to do the work of deconstructing what was toxic for them, if we don't name and define ourselves in opposition to injustice and violence every time, then people aren't going to trust us, and they shouldn't. On the other hand, as a community, we don't want to be anti-stuff. We don't want to be concerned with the negative, always defining ourselves in opposition to this or that institution or doctrine. We don't want to be anti-stuff, we want to be pro-stuff. We want to live out what we wish all those other places had been for them. We don't want to define ourselves In a negative way, we want to define ourselves with an abundance of diversity, rich conversation, service, justice, and love. And so what we did was that we took our worship service. That was the same 10, 12 students every time. We had done it the same way for 20 years under the same name. And it was okay for those 12 students, but it wasn't reaching the unreached. And so we said, let's blow it open, let's try it. Maybe it fails. That's okay, we'll try it again. Who's gonna know? Who's gonna care? And so we started something by putting our worship around a dinner table. And instead of it being a monologue, as much as I would love for them to just like listen to me with all attention, right? It's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. We're having discussion around a table. At best, I might share a parable with them and ask them some questions. We're gonna have a back and forth pedagogical experience. And that's the way that Jesus taught, because Jesus was not concerned with you getting the right answers from him, but about you going on an experiential journey of your own. And that's what we're trying to do with our students. And it's made room for them to not have one right answer. It's made room for their doubt. I tell them, we market it as a BYOB event. Bring your own brain, please. And now we've got twice as many students, 3 times as many students sometimes, and they are saying things like, I never felt like I knew enough about the Bible to participate in a Bible study, but now I feel like that's okay, and I don't have to have all the answers. I told our students when I came here that we're not looking to steal the Baptists from the Baptist campus ministry. That's cool, good for them. We're not looking to steal the Catholics from the Catholic student ministry, as awesome as those students are. Great. We're here for the students who have not connected with any other campus ministry or any other local church, and that's who has been coming to Stetson Wesley. We had 2 students last year come back to church for the first time through their experience at Wesley. By the time they graduated in the spring, they went to seminary. We're talking about lives changed. We're talking about students of all kinds of backgrounds. In the last year and a half, we went from the least diverse to the most diverse campus ministry at Stetson. It's amazing what happens when you tell people that their story is important and worthy of being shared, no matter who they are. And that is fruit worth waiting for and changing for. And so I really like that the text today has this metaphor of a tree. Maybe it's a fig tree, but any tree you can picture in your mind is a pretty perfect metaphor for exploring and appreciating roots of tradition and the ways we want to change and evolve. Because a tree is not anti-seed. That would be ridiculous. They're pro-tree, which means that they grow beyond seeds. They're not dualistic. It's not us versus them. It's tree and seed people. It's a growth that transcends and includes. In the narrative, we aren't talking about making new teams, us and them. We're doing it the right way, they're doing it the wrong way. We're talking about when the tradition expands, it transcends what was and includes what can come next and who can come in next. Because Jesus in his time wasn't pushing against the law and the power systems and the ways of being in the world and his own culture and saying, this isn't Judaism. He wasn't saying Judaism is wrong. He was saying it's bigger. And so those on the margins of the church, these unreached people who are asking hard questions, they are not saying that Christianity is wrong. They're saying it's bigger. Finally, I think that young people have a lot to bring to the table, and I think they're worth investing in. They're a lot more worth investing in than being afraid of. I don't think that they'll simply witness an incredible time in the life of the church. I think they're going to be one of the greatest catalysts for it to change. Just as an example, I work with a lot of millennials, and millennials are now the largest generation and the most diverse in American history. They are also the most educated generation that has ever walked the planet. They value being informed, and they are exposed to more perspectives and religious ideas than ever before. They are preparing to wrestle with the questions that are going to define the church in this century because the old answers just aren't satisfying anymore. People don't need to come back to church to secure their place socially anymore. They don't need it to network. And our loss of power is going to give us the ability to reclaim our authenticity. I don't know what the church is going to look like in 10 or 20 or 30 years, but I believe that we are headed in a direction that is more global, more connected, more inclusive, and more informed. The church is going to have to put their ministry where their mouth is if we're going to hold a meaningful role in the coming years. We'll have to welcome more questions, and we're going to make room for more misfits, and we are going to have to account for the ugly side of our history, and that's okay. This is going to be a confusing, engaging, heartbreaking, beautiful era, and you're not going to want to miss it. And it's okay if it's painful sometimes. It's okay if you look at statistics or you hear about church decline and you think that something you love is dying. Resurrection people know something about death. Resurrection people look a lot like gardeners, and they know something about figs being out of season. Sometimes something has to shed its leaves for new life to spring up. It is a healthy thing then to have your heart broken every now and then. It means you're still in love with it. It takes passion to flip tables, and it takes a whole lot more courage to build new ones, and then to invite the stranger, the other, and the Holy Spirit to join you at that table. I think the church is ripe for a time such as this, and I believe it's fig season again. Thank you for letting me be with you today.
Amen. First Church, will you stand as we get ready to worship? But before we do that, we're going to take a special love ring.